Thank you for tuning in to Entertain the Geeky, your source for nerd news.
Hey guys, what's up? This is Jason back at you with more nerd news. So I'm just gonna jump right into it here. One big thing that is blowing my mind this week is the remixed season 4 of Arrested Development. So on May the 4th, so on Cinco de Cuatro, the people at Netflix and creator Mitch Hurwitz released a remixed version of season 4. Now, I know I'm not alone out there in the fact that I liked season 4 the way it was. I thought it was an interesting little kind of twisty turny. You had to wait a little longer for the payoff, but maybe that's not what Arrested Development fans wanted. But the remixed version takes all of what they had done and puts it in chronological order and does more than one character per episode, which, if you remember, the original series kind of put the focus on a singular character each episode, and then you kind of had to wait to the end of the season to see how it all connected and kind of paid off. But they decided to they decided to change that up and put it all in chronological order, put more than one character in each episode, and it works. It feels like what Arrested Development used to feel like with the first, second, and third season. Keep your ears out later in the week, as I am going to break down Arrested Development as a series. I'm very excited to sit down and do this. I've loved it even since it first aired on TV. Yes, I was one of those ones that watched it on Sunday nights when it aired. Really, really dug the show. So I'm going to be breaking it down a little later in this week here on Nerd News. They did show off a trailer for Season 5, which comes out on May the 29th. Ridiculously soon, and I'm surprised, in all reality, that they were able to keep this quiet for so long that they were working on Season 5 of Arrested Development. But it comes out on May the 29th, so not too long of a wait to see the Bluth family reunite once again. Another trailer that was shown off this week was the first full theatrical trailer for Ant-Man and the Wasp. Excuse me. And this trailer, I mean, the movie looks fun. I talked about this when the teaser came out. It looks like it's going to be just as fun as the first film. We do have some more footage of the film's villain, Ghost, who can phase shift and change her density to allow her to pass through solid objects or become super dense. It does look like the fan theories were correct. Lawrence Fishburne is going to be playing Goliath, or at least a person who at one time was Goliath. There's a funny little exchange in the book between Lawrence Fishburne and Paul Rudd, where he tries to wow him with the fact that he got as big as 20 inches when he first used the Goliath suit. And then Scott has to one-up him with the fact that he got to like 65 inches. I'm sorry, 65 feet, inches. I'm losing my mind. Feet. And it kind of has, an obvious little joke thrown in there about how they're trying to outdo each other with their size. But it was a funny little exchange nonetheless. And it looks like at some point in the past, Lawrence Fishburne's character worked with Dr. Pym on the Goliath project. So here's hoping, fingers crossed, we get to see Goliath on screen, even in, maybe just in flashbacks, but it'd be really cool if you got to be a part of some kind of battle in the movie. I think that would be really fun. It may not bode well for his character because in the comics, during the Civil War storyline, Goliath actually got killed. He was one of the casualties that ultimately led Captain America to put down his shield and surrender and give up and think that, we had gone too far, we had taken this too far. So, could spell doom for a character that we're just about to be introduced to, but we'll find out come July. So not to be outdone by its competitors, DC is going to get in on the streaming service. With Disney being, the obvious competitor I'm referring to. Disney is, going to start its own streaming service next year that will include all its animated movies, live-action movies, cartoons, Marvel movies, Star Wars movies. all of that right there on a streaming service, able to bring it right into your living room. But again, DC is not to be outdone. They are starting their own streaming service. They are titling it just simply DC Universe. Excuse me. And it looks like some things that we weren't really sure where they would end up will be, exclusive to this DC streaming service, such as the third season of Young Justice, which I know myself personally and probably a lot of you out there are quite looking forward to. The Titan show, which I've kind of brought my opinions to this show a couple of times. I'm kind of got a wait and see attitude on this. I'm not really sure whether or not it's going to live up to, who these characters are. The pictures that we saw of some of the characters' costumes looked a little weird. But I'm going to, again, have a wait and see attitude, and hopefully we see something cool out of this. They're also teasing the idea of a live-action Swamp Thing story that will be streaming exclusively on their DC Universe streaming service. And Swamp Thing's an interesting character. I mean, there's been some goofy movies, but he's definitely a character that has been kind of, taken center stage recently, probably since Blackest Night and forward, where we understood that Swamp Thing was the guardian of the green, which essentially means he is the planet. He is the guardian of the life that makes up our planet, and essentially what that means is something terrible can happen halfway around the world, and he would know it. He is connected to every bit of the life-giving, or the life that has been given to the planet. So could be a very interesting, idea to try to do a live-action style thing. Previously we've seen Swamp Thing done with makeup. I'm leaning more toward the idea that it probably would look better if it was kind of makeup augmented with a little bit of CG, just because we've come so far. I mean, if you went and saw Avengers Infinity War and saw Thanos and the Black Order, it's just amazing what we've been able to do. And true, this will be a TV budget, but that's why I think that makeup augmented a little bit with CGI can work really well. Other streaming shows have had some success with that in the past, including like Stranger Things. Even some of the Marvel Netflix shows like Daredevil and Jessica Jones have had great success just kind of augmenting a makeup or a costume with some CG to make it look a little more streamlined. But we'll see. They're also promising that all of their DC movies, all that kind of stuff, all the shows that they have already, like Flash and Legends of Tomorrow and Arrow, will all be a part of this streaming service as well. So I don't know why we need to do something separate for all of DC. For that being said, I don't understand why we have to do something separate for Disney either. But this is the way of the future. Streaming services are here to stay, and it looks like everybody wants to get a piece of that. Switching over to the world of video games, we saw a new trailer this week for Red Dead Redemption 2, and you can check that out up on entertainthegeeky.com as well. And this looks like it's going to be just another big epic from Rockstar. I mean, the first Red Dead Redemption, as well as the other, some of the Grand Theft Auto games we've done here in the modern era, have definitely changed the game up as far as open world and kind of sandbox. And it looks like Red Dead Redemption 2 will be no exception. New story, kind of set in the waning days of the outlaws in the Wild West, and our protagonist and a group of, his gang, I guess, try to rob a bank and it goes bad. And it's really just about the death of the outlaw in the West. We're setting this in a time when the West started to become tame and the lawmen moved in and really started to put an end to these crime gangs and these crime rings that were kind of controlling the lawless chaos that was the Wild West at the time. So looks to be just another fantastic trip into the past from the team behind the first Red Dead Redemption. The trailer doesn't really give many details away other than what I've spoken of, the bank robbery gone wrong and the gang, the Vanderlyn gang, on the run, and the kind of the taming of the Wild West. But it definitely looks like it's going to be another fantastic release, right up there with some of the other fantastic releases we've seen this year. Speaking of fantastic releases we've seen this year, the new God of War game has officially crossed the 3 million copies sold this week, which is a huge milestone to get to so quickly. The game itself is fantastic. I mean, I've recently played through it from beginning to end. We did a review on it, myself and Mike, a couple weeks ago on Nerd News. If you haven't checked that out, it's up there too at the main page there at entertainthegeeky.com. But the game is fantastic from beginning to end. It really dives into the greater details of the Norse mythology. And if you're a fan of Norse mythology, like my friend Mike, who reviewed the game with me, you will probably do the same thing he did. He actually called the ending. Didn't even hesitate. He knew exactly what was going to happen. He sent me a text and kind of laid it out, and then said, if I'm right, don't say anything, don't respond to this text. And then we talked afterward, and obviously he was 100% spot on. And I won't go into those details here because they're a little spoilery, but I suggest checking out the game. It's really, really Game of the Year material. And I think, maybe Red Dead Redemption will be saying the same thing when that game comes out, that it really will change the sandbox game again, do something new with that. Switching over into the world of movies for a minute, apparently Marvel have sat down with over 65 directors trying to find a director for this Black Widow movie that they're now really pushing. Obviously, this is something that we won't hear an announcement for, or probably know anything about until at least after Avengers 4, when the movie schedule for Beyond is announced to us. But it seems like they're taking this seriously. They really are covering all the bases, trying to find the right person to bring this movie to life. Seems like they're dedicated. Sticking with movies, apparently, a rumor has it that our Spawn reboot film that is going to be heavily influenced by Todd McFarlane and some of the creators, I think, at New Line. But the rumor is that they might have found their Al Simmons. And the rumor is that Jamie Foxx might be cast as Al Simmons. And we've seen, recently with the trend of R-rated superhero movies, we've seen that these kind of things can be, violent when they're rated R, and they are planning on making this a rated R reboot. And we've seen Jamie Foxx do rated R. I mean, Django Unchained comes to mind, a very violent movie from Quentin Tarantino. And he's a fantastic actor, so, I mean, if this rumor turns out to be true, I'm 100% on board. I like Jamie Foxx, I like the story of Al Simmons, and honestly, I'd like to see it, taken a little more seriously than we've seen it in the past. The old Spawn live-action movie comes to mind when I say these things, but I'd like to see it taken a little more seriously, and maybe, push that boundary up to where the comic was with the rating in the R range there. Moving over to the world of comics, we are getting all closer to the marriage of Batman and Catwoman, and not to be outdone, Marvel is marrying Colossus and Kitty Pryde. And I think to myself, while I'm excited to see these things change and see these books try to build stories out of this, I really do think that the marriage thing has become something of a gimmick in the comic world, and it's not new. This is not a new trend. A big deal was made when Cyclops married Jean. A big deal was made when Peter married Mary Jane. When Superman married Lois Lane. It just seems like, at this point, we all kind of know what's going to happen. The marriage is going to be interrupted by some villain who doesn't like the idea that the heroes get to be happy and have normal lives. And I just feel like these gimmicks to engage the comic audience, to get them to buy books, aren't necessary. I mean, I'm buying books. I like books. I am intrigued to read all the new stuff that they have coming out each month. But there it is. We are in this loop with comics where everything old is new again. Everything comes back around, fresh start and all that. Speaking of fresh starts, Marvel's fresh start is in full swing. The first Avengers comic has come out. Haven't picked up a copy yet, but I've got one on the way, and I've heard it's a great book that kind of goes back to our Avengers from 1 million BC, which was, shown to us very briefly during the Marvel Legacy one-shot that kind of kicked off this whole thing that they've got going on now. But again, we've talked about that on the show. You guys know my feelings on reboots and relaunches, but it just keeps happening because DC can't be outdone by Marvel. And even though they just did Rebirth and have kind of been moving in the right direction, we are getting what they're calling a creative refresh with new books that will be launched by new creators, new number ones that are all kind of spinning out of the events of Dark Knight's Metal, the events of No Justice, the Justice League story that's about to come out. So here we are again, another comic company rebooting everything that they're doing again. So moving on over to the world of movies, a couple of quick things to go over here. From the world of Han Solo, we've heard a couple of things. One, apparently C-3PO is going to be in the movie, which will, extend his record of being in every Star Wars movie by the one more. Even though I can't really understand why C-3PO would be a part of the story at this point. We'll find out come Memorial Day weekend. We also saw a clip of our first Chewie and Han piloting the Millennium Falcon together. And it is just as nostalgic and great as I expect probably the movie will be at making us feel for this man long before he became, or during the journey of him becoming the scoundrel that we love. Can't wait to see the movie. Very, very excited. Also, quick in the world of movies, I don't know, I struggled with whether or not this was something to put on the Nerd News show, but it is a show that is, fueled by me and my nerddom and my fandoms, and if you're like me and you're a Tenacious D fan, they have announced that a sequel to The Pick of Destiny will be coming out later this year, in October, apparently. And it's been a while since that original Pick of Destiny movie came out. But Jack Black and Kyle Gass still doing Tenacious D stuff, still making music, still touring, and apparently still making movies because they're going to bring a new one to us. Switching over into the world of television for a minute, a couple of things. A new trailer for Luke Cage has hit the internet, which is coming out just next month, June 22nd, I believe is the date. And it has shown us the villain that they're going to use to challenge Cage. They're bringing the Bushmaster to the screen. And if you're unfamiliar, he's kind of a voodoo-y guy. He gets superpowers from spells and various things. It's all a little kind of hokey, which was a lot of the Luke Cage comic back in the day. But it looks like he's going to be, a very strong, fearful presence. And it looks like maybe a little bit of that magic is still going to be a part of his character. There is a part in the trailer where we see him performing some kind of ritual. We'll find out come June. Very excited to see where they go with Luke Cage. The first season was just fantastic, and I loved him in The Defenders. Can't wait to see, what they bring to us next. So also in television, Gotham is eking ever towards just being a Batman show. And I've never really been a watcher of Gotham. I've been paying attention. I always want to keep up with the things, even when I'm not, watching the episode by episode story. But it definitely seems like they're finally going to make this a Batman show. And if that's the case, man, next season will be a season I will sit down and watch. There was kind of the gimmick of Jerome being the Joker, but it's actually Jeremiah that's the Joker. But seeing him, he's a lot more calculated than crazy, and I think that's something that I value the Joker being crazy sometimes, but I also value this sadistic, intelligent person who just knows how to push everyone's buttons. And that's what I get. The vibe I get from these trailers with Jeremiah, decked out in a purple suit as the Joker, white face and everything. And I'm excited that if what this means is we're finally going to get a Batman show, that we might have put all the right pieces in place to make it a successful Batman show and not something that's campy or goofy. It almost kind of feels like they did kind of a switcheroo on us. Instead of Batman being the reason the villains escalate, it's the villains' escalation that makes Bruce ultimately have to escalate. And while I don't necessarily agree with that as a way to tell the story, if what it means in the end is I get a good Batman show, I'm all for it. So, heading back over into the comic world real quick, got a couple more things one more thing to go over here. Our big Infinity Wars Marvel crossover that's coming. They've been doing this Infinity Countdown story kind of as a prelude to this big thing. We don't really know what the central theming behind this is. They're kind of, the Infinity Countdown is kind of just putting some characters on the board that will be central figures for this this crossover. But we did see a teaser this week that shows just Thanos triumphantly with his arms in the air, and the teaser reads Thanos wins, and it's Infinity Wars. And while I guess we all assumed Thanos was going to be the central figure within this story, it looks like there might be a new one. We've got another teaser that came out a couple of days later that just shows a character who looks a little bit like Death, but more, I don't know, I guess less like the stereotypical Death with the shroud and the skull face and stuff. You know, those obviously aren't there, but this definitely looks like a Death type character with a teaser that just says "Who is Requiem." So this character is obviously called Requiem. Not really sure where this character fits in, as again, Infinity Countdown has just kind of been putting all the players on the board and showing us who these people are, who the people we're going to be following throughout the Infinity Wars story will be. But there you have it. We might have a new, threat to take down. Maybe Thanos, maybe a threat even bigger than Thanos. Who knows? But that's going to be it. We had a lot of stuff to go over. Honestly, that just seems to be the weeks we're having here. It just, every week it just gets bigger and bigger, and there's just more to talk about. But if you guys are digging what we're putting down, do me a favor and head on over to entertainthegeeky.com. We got everything there, the blog posts, all the shows, Chris and Roger's Entertain the Geeky podcast, my Nerd News podcast, obviously. We got Matt and Jeff with the Board Game Bros podcast. They're brothers. They play board games. They talk about the board games they play, deconstruction style. If you're local and you're a listener, we're going to be out at Miniature Market at 270 in Manchester on Sunday, May the 20th from noon to 5. We're going to be demoing some of the floor specials that the Miniature Market has great discounts on, great pricing. So we're going to be demoing some of those games. So come out and try it before you buy it. And if you want to buy it, you'll get a heck of a discount on buying it as well. We're also going to keep an eye out in June. We're going to be back at the Miniature Market demoing our very own EG Games Conniving Cooks, which we will demo on the day we launch the Kickstarter. We're very excited to launch the Kickstarter and do a demo day and have everybody come out and try out the game. We're very excited about it. If you want to talk, chit chat, or let me know what you think of the show, things you like, things you don't like, things you might want to hear in the future, just drop me an email at etgnerdnews@gmail.com. Until next time, guys, stay geeky.